So I had a question about negative exponents and negative numbers, and so I wanted to just make a little example video to help you wrap your head around this. So here is like the quintessential negative numbers, exponents example. Okay, so I have lots of other videos where I really break down how to, like, why all these rules work the way that they do. So I'll drop links to those in the description. But I'm just gonna get right to it. So I want to notice with example A here, so 6 to the negative second. So the big thing, like the big visual thing that you have to do is you need to recognize if you have a negative number or a negative exponent or both, and then you have to process those pieces of information differently. So in this case, this is a positive number and this is a negative exponent. And what a negative exponent means is that whatever number is attached to the negative exponent, it goes to the denominator. So this is what I mean. This 6 to the negative second, I can rewrite as 1 over 6 squared. Now I've used the negative exponent. So it's really important that you view the negative exponent as a direction that is telling you where to put that number. So now I have done what the negative exponent told me to do. And now I have a separate math problem. What is 6 squared? 6 squared is 36. So this becomes 1 over 36. So that's what the negative exponent means. Now, let's compare that to the next example, negative 6 squared. So this is super important that you recognize there are no negative exponents here. You have to take a moment to really digest that. Take your time with this and remember what it means. There's no negative exponent here, so there's nothing about moving this to the top or bottom. However, this is a negative number. And this case, the way that we view this, that we've talked about in some other videos, is I actually, like from the order of operations standpoint, I view this as two separate operations. The negative, since there's no parentheses around this, the negative kind of comes last. And so I really think of this as negative 1 times 6 squared. So if you think about PEMDAS order of operations, I have to do the exponent first. So by breaking up this problem into two pieces, so I can really visualize it, now I know how to evaluate this. What is 6 squared? It's 36. This would be negative 36. It's negative 36 not because we had a negative exponent, right? It's negative 36 because we had a negative number. Does that make sense? Okay, so now what about C? Okay, so now I have negative 6 surrounded by parentheses. So now I can't break the negative apart because the parentheses now come together. So with this little tweak, putting parentheses around the negative 6, now I view this as negative 6 times negative 6. Negative 6 times negative 6 becomes positive 36. Okay, and now let's throw the kitchen sink, negative number and a negative exponent. Okay, so when you have that negative exponent, you want to do what the negative exponent is telling you to do, which is to rewrite your problem like we did in the first one. So this becomes 1 over. I'm going to carry the parentheses along, okay? Problem started with parentheses. I'm just taking everything and I'm just rewriting the problem like you see here. And now I've got 1 over negative 6 in parentheses squared. Well, I know negative 6 in parentheses will come out to positive 36. So this guy here equals 1 over 36. So notice there were two problems where we had a negative exponent and that resulted in a fraction, not necessarily a negative number. When we had a negative number, that was because we started with a negative 6. So it's you've like really got to master and keep these exponent rules straight. Okay, so let's try this again, slightly the same spirit. Okay, so the one of the biggest issues I see with negative exponents is actually with a problem like this. So the thing that you want to recognize here is that this x is the only thing that's attached to the negative exponent, right? The 5 does not have a negative exponent on it. So when I'm interpreting that, this right here, that's where I'm going to rearrange the x. The 5 is not coming along with it. The 5 does not have a negative exponent. The 5 has to stay put. The 5 stays put, but that x squared, that goes to the bottom. Now, let's contrast that to b. Now notice I have parentheses around this whole thing. So when I want to use this negative exponent, now what goes to the denominator? In this case, this becomes 1 over 5x squared. So notice I just take everything now that's in the parentheses. I can't break that up right now. And I've just sent it all to the denominator. But can I evaluate this farther? Yes, I can. So this can become 1 over 5 squared x squared. And what is 5 squared? It's 25. So this is 1 over 25x squared. So again, I just want to point out here, this negative exponent did not turn anything negative, right? It actually has to do with fractions. So you, like, if anything, you want to associate maybe negative exponents a lot of times with fractions. Okay, so what about C here? What do you say? Can I break this up into a fraction or what? I'll give you, in fact, maybe you want to pause this and think about it for a second. There's no negative exponent here, just a negative number. And this x squared, this doesn't have parentheses around it, right? So this is just x squared. There's actually nothing else we can do to this. This is done. This is hunky-dory. What about D? Okay, I think you should pause the video. We've talked a lot, so I think you should pause the video. I think you should try this because math is not a spectator sport and you'll get more out of this if you try. I think you should pause this and try this. Okay, so I got two separate issues. I've got a negative number and I've got a negative exponent. But first I want to deal with the negative exponent. So I'm going to rewrite this as 1 over 5x squared. Negative 5x squared. And now what? Now I can go ahead and I can evaluate this. So this becomes 1 over negative 5 in parentheses squared and x in parentheses squared. So notice how I've broken this up and I've maintained the parentheses. So now, since this is negative 5 in parentheses squared, so remember, that becomes negative 5 times negative 5. So that equals 25 down there. So sorry, that was a terrible arrow. Over here, boom. So this becomes 1 over 25x squared. Okay. So I've talked a lot. We've talked a lot. I think if you really want to test yourself on this now, I think you should pause the video here and try these four. Again, math is not a spectator sport. If you are watching this because you were struggling with this, you are going to do the best things for yourself by trying. Try this and then hit play when you think you've got it. And even if you make a mistake, it's okay. You'll learn more that way. Okay, so A, my reasoning here. No negative exponent, okay? So I do have a negative number, and the negative number does not have parentheses around it. So I'm going to think of this as two separate operations, like this. So this becomes negative 1 times 49, so this equals negative 49, okay? B, now I have a negative exponent, so now I've got 1 over negative 7 squared, and then I know that that's going to be 1 over negative 7 times negative 7. So this is 1 over positive 49 because a negative times a negative will cancel out. What about C? This becomes 1 over 7 squared. So that's just 1 over 49. And then, okay, now we haven't talked about this one, but this is a really good extension. So now I've got negative 7 without parentheses to the negative second. So the way I want to view this then would be like so. Negative 1 times 7 to the negative second. So this becomes negative 1 times 1 over 7 squared. And this equals negative 1 over 49. Okay. Now, if you want to try this just one more time, and this time I've put some variables in, I've got just another set of examples. Again, I think you should pause here, give it a go. Even if you make a mistake, you'll learn more and hopefully it'll click a little bit more. So I recommend you pause here, hit play when you're ready. So starting with A. So the only thing that has the negative exponent is this x again, right? So this becomes 3 over x squared, and that's all I can do in that case. Now, for B, I have the whole set of parentheses. So this becomes 1 over negative 3x squared. So I just take all of that, I just flip everything because all of that is attached to the negative second. And then I've got 1 over, so this is negative 3 squared and x squared, so this becomes 1 over. So negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9, so this becomes 1 over 9x squared. And then for a final curveball, so now I've got negative 3x to the negative third. Okay, so same idea. So I've got the negative third exponent. So first I rewrite this to the third, 1 over negative 3x to the third. And then here's where this maybe gets a little tricky. Okay, so I've got this. So now what is negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3? Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. 9 times positive 3 is negative 27. So you do have to think about the sign a little bit when you work through this. So now this is a negative. So it all just depends. It's like totally situational, and you just got to kind of use your noggin and what you know about negative numbers, order of operations, and exponents. You've really got to think about it and take your time with it. They're really small problems, so it's easy to look at these and say, oh, that's really easy because it's small, but they kind of pack a lot of punch. So like, don't be surprised if you have to take a moment to think about it and think about everything that you know. I think that's really important. Okay, so that's it. So thanks for asking that question. Hopefully this was helpful. You got other questions, you can always reach out to me.